You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Forget the lies, the money. We're in this together and through it all. They said that nothing's forever, and they refuse to see the change in me. Why won't they wake up? Come on, come on, come on. Let's get it out to the music. Play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome back to Reliving the War, and welcome to the 9th of February 1998. Raw's in Evansville, Indiana this week, while Nitro takes place in El Paso, Texas. We've got WWF No Way Out later in the week, and I'll get a review video up on Sunday that'll look at the entire event. And speaking of pay-per-views, I'll be going back to 1995 and 1996 to cover the pay-per-views that were missed at the beginning of Reliving the War. You may have noticed WrestleMania XII getting uploaded a week or two ago, so keep an eye on the channel for more of those over the next few weeks. It's kinda interesting going back and seeing how far both companies have come since beginning this series. So we're going to look at the first 60 minutes of Nitro as usual, and then we'll compare Raw to Nitro. So let's get started over on TNT. We're getting our weekly Hulk Hogan promo out of the way. Bischoff and Hollywood make their way down to the ring, and Hollywood wants to address Macho Man Randy Savage. Hulk says the NWO lives and breathes by Hollywood's rules, and Hogan's sick of hearing about the NWO falling apart and Macho Man going rogue. So once again, Hulk wants to take care of family business. Hulk Hogan wants to show everyone the pecking order, so tonight Hogan wants a match against Randy Savage. Savage appears in the audience, and Savage accepts the challenge. He says once he beats Hogan tonight, it'll be Macho Man who faces Sting at Super Brawl. The Mega Powers explode once again, and it's going to happen tonight on Monday Nitro. Schiavone announces an Outsiders vs Steiners match for tonight's main event during a Nitro Girls routine. And when the cameras go to the commentary desk, we learn that Larry Zbyszko's missing. Tenay and Schiavone have no idea where the living legend is. We've got, holy shit, Glacier versus Steve McMichael to start off the in-ring action, and Schiavone explains that Glacier turned his back on Ernest Miller recently on Saturday night, so Glacier's now a heel. Let's give it a chance. This could be the moment we get swayed on old Frosty Balls. Glacier starts off pretty strong, and check this out, look at how aggressive he gets in the corner. Great start. He begins posing in the ring and the crowd boos. Mongo whacks Glacier from behind, and Louis Spicolli shows up at the commentary desk. He says Zbyszko asked him to bring his bags to the arena. He brought them, but Louis doesn't know where Zbyszko is either. Tenay and Schiavone aren't buying it. They think this Louis guy's up to no good. Mongo performs a back body drop and Glacier falls out of the ring. McMichael thinks he's the Karate Kid, and Glacier's about to beat the shit out of these kids in the front row. Man, what a turnaround for Glacier. He gets back in the ring, he performs a stun gun on Mongo, he then throws McMichael out of the ring, and Glacier shows Steve how it's done. We see a nice suplex from Glacier, but he unfortunately jumps right into a back elbow. Mongo performs his 3-point stance tackles. We see the Mongo spike, and Mongo wins. After the bell, Mortis attacks Mongo, and McMichael completely no-sells the beatdown. He gets right back up, he takes care of Vandenberg, and he tombstones Mortis, and he says afterwards he hopes the British Bulldog was watching in the back. So, this new Glacier, I gotta say, honestly, I think he's still a fucking prick. Spicolli reiterates that Larry asked him to bring his bags to Nitro, and he really hopes Larry isn't in any trouble. Norman Smiley then has his Nitro debut match against Conan. The Cradle DDT followed by a Tequila Sunrise was enough to put Smiley away. We'll talk about Smiley in future episodes, but his debut match here wasn't bad at all.
Disco fever, yeah, 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 yeah.
Disco had a match against Yuji Nagata next. Remember Nagata was on that great winning streak not too long ago? Yeah, well, he took a loss here to Disco Inferno. Nagata was in control for most of the match, but he missed a top rope attack, and this led to Disco performing the Chartbuster and picking up the win. If this pisses you off, don't worry, because here comes La Parka with his trusty chair, knocking Disco the fuck out and doing some disco dancing afterwards. Yuji Nagata thinks he's safe, but La Parka whacks him too. The chairman of WCW got a great pop from the El Paso audience. audience. Louis Spicolli thinks La Parka hit Zbyszko with a chair backstage, so he goes off to investigate. Lex Luger comes out and he says he's sick of hearing Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage talk about their little feud, and Luger says Hogan should really focus on Super Brawl in his match with the Stinger. As far as the Macho Man goes, he's got an ODQ match to look forward to at the pay-per-view with the total package, so Lex says he's got his gear on tonight, he's gonna go to the ring after Savage vs Hogan, and he doesn't care if Macho's hurt. Luger will fight Randy tonight on Monday Nitro. Man, everyone wants a piece of Randy Savage. Eddie and Chavo Guerrero then came home to El Paso for a tag team match. Eddie and Chris Jericho versus Chavo and Dean Malenko. The crowd chanted for Eddie at the opening bell and they cheered for him when he sneak attacked his own nephew. Chavo came back with a tilt-a-world backbreaker counter, and Chris Jericho wanted to wrestle with his cruiserweight belt on, but Charles Robinson forced him to take it off. Chris has to put up with Jericho's sucks chants as Chavo puts him down with a springboard bulldog, and when Dean Malenko gets in the ring, the heel team gets completely wiped out. Some teamwork from Eddie and Chris behind the referee's back put Malenko in a bad position, and anytime there's an opportunity for the heels to cheat, they take it. Eventually, Chavo gets a hot tag and he's got some great fire, but the crowd cheers when Eddie and Jericho put a stop to Chavo's momentum. It ends when Eddie shoves Chavo off the top rope and Jericho applies his Lion Tamer. A very good match to end R1 of Nitro. Raw starts off with Sunny dressed up as Marilyn Monroe and she's singing Happy Birthday to Freddie Blassie. Blassie was celebrating his 80th birthday, so Vince and company came up with this idea, and yeah, I'm sure he loved it. The WWF wastes no time at all by presenting a Steve Austin promo to kick things off in the arena, along with the Legion of Doom versus Jeff Jarrett and Barry Windham match. On Nitro, we've got Jam Master El Dandy versus Juventud Guerrera. Stone Cold's carrying a bag on his way to the ring and he says he wants to make something clear to Shawn Michaels. You don't rub a championship belt in Austin's face on national television. Austin says there's no way out for Shawn Michaels this week at the pay-per-view, except there is, but more on that later in the week. And Austin wants a piece of Shawn's ass this Sunday in Houston, Texas. Shawn appears on the Titantron and ooh, he's not great, is he? He says Austin got a little tied up last week and he was all revved up with no place to go. HBK knows how to pull Austin's strings and HBK punked Austin out last week on Raw. Austin needs to realize that it's Shawn who calls the shots, not him. But if Austin can give Shawn one good reason to come to the ring for a fight, then Shawn will be more than happy to do so. Steve says he knew this would happen, so he grabs Shawn's WWF belt. He's got it in the ring. Shawn laughs and he says the belt's right beside him. It's in this bag here. Shawn pulls out a toy belt and he realizes that Austin wasn't lying. Stone Cold's got the WWF title, and if Shawn wants it back, all he has to do is walk to the ring tonight and take it away from Stone Cold. Good promo. We may be back to stealing belts, but it works. HBK looks absolutely destroyed though. The contents are running out of the fanny pack like the sand in an hourglass. L.O.D. versus the NWA then. This is a rematch from 2 weeks ago, and the NWA defeated Hawk and Animal thanks to Jim Cornette's tennis racket. The commentators say there's a lot of internal pressure for the L.O.D. to beat these guys and start winning matches again, but they take another loss here. These outcomes don't seem to make the NWA faction any better, but they do serve to make the L.O.D. look a whole lot worse. Hawk falls out of the ring and he gets attacked by the Rock and Roll Express and Jim Cornette. What struck me here was how loud the attack was, with Ricky Morton removing the ring steps and Hawk getting dropped on the steel, yet Earl Hebner didn't see or hear a thing. Double J locks in the figure 4 and Bradshaw hits the ring. He chases Jarrett and Windham back up the rampway, he hits Ricky and Robert too, and the crowd boos as Hawk and Animal stand in the ring, once again looking absolutely clueless as to what just happened. Over on TNT, Jammy Bastard El Dandy gets more time in a WCW Nitro ring when he takes on Juventud Guerrera. Unfortunately though, he struggled to maintain control early on after taking a Hurricane Rana and getting backdropped over the ring post and to the outside. Juvi comes off the top rope with a crossbody, and just when serious professional El Dandy thought he had Juvi where he wanted him, he got his head smacked on the ring post. Fucking come on El Dandy, do something. Dandy realizes all this fancy shit ain't the way, so he hits Juvi with a knee and Juvi takes a big old knife-edge chop. We then see a nice Hurricane Rana counter from Guerrera, but Dandy reverses with a pin attempt. Guerrera kicks out at 2. Dandy then gets brave and he tries a dive from the top and he almost lands on his head. Guerrera pulls off the Juvi driver and the match ends with Guerrera's 450 splash. After the bell, Chris Jericho attacks Guerrero, but Juvi dropkicks the Cruiserweight champ and Jericho falls out of the ring. Chris grabs a mic and he tells Juvi to take it easy. He only wanted to congratulate him for his excellent performance. Juvi says he wants a shot at the Cruiserweight title, and Jericho says Juvi's a one-hit wonder just like Dexy's Midnight Runners. I'm sure all of 4 people knew who Dexys were in El Paso. Juvi speaks in Spanish and Jericho translates. Juvi wants to put his mask on the line for a shot at the Cruiserweight title. Jericho accepts the challenge. He's going to show everyone how ugly Guerrero is, and he's going to do it at Super Brawl. Steve Regal versus Goldberg next on Nitro. Pierre versus Henry Godwinn on Raw. I mean, why? DX have came up with a plan to get Shawn's belt back, and we have to wait and see what Shawn, Hunter and China have in store for Stone Cold. We'll come back to this later in the show. On Shotgun, the Quebecers, no, not the amazing French Canadians, the Quebecers cost the Godwinns a match against Los Boricuas. High stakes, guys, high stakes. So we have a Pierre versus Henry Godwinn match, and we've also got the Godwinns versus the Quebecers later in the week on pay-per-view. Lucky us. The 2 trade clotheslines at the beginning of the match. Henry falls out of the ring and Pierre lands on his face when diving over the top rope. You can see it a bit better here on the replay. Pierre then performs a top rope leg drop. Phineas watches on from the apron with a confused look on his face. Pierre misses a top rope senton, and this leads to Pierre getting sent out of the ring. The referee gets distracted and Jacques hits Henry with a slot bucket, but the Godwinns were one step ahead and Phineas uses his slot bucket to smack Pierre. Henry wins the match. And if the Godwinns win at No Way Out, then you should consider the Quebecers completely fucking done, because this WWF run so far hasn't been great. We then see China backstage and she interrupts the Boricuas. The lads were playing dominoes, but there's no time for that shit right now. China wants the Boricuas to help Shawn and Hunter, and DX are willing to pay for their services. Savio says China's got a deal, and what's interesting here is that China spoke way more in this promo than what she ever has before, but she spoke in fluent Spanish. Over on Nitro then, we have got a noteworthy match between Steve Regal and Goldberg. Regal's last match of this WCW run because he got fired shortly after this bout. Let's check out the match first, and you guys know how Goldberg's been booked up to this point, so keep his run in the back of your mind. Goldberg grabs a side headlock and Regal counters with a snapmare. Regal then lays in a few kicks, and look right here, you can see Goldberg doesn't know how to react or sell the kicks. We have seen Regal wrestle like this a million times, and yes, he lays it in, but he always lays it in. Regal then applies an armbar, and you can see him tell Goldberg to take a rest. Goldberg isn't so sure what to do next, so Regal moves into a waistlock and Goldberg performs his rolling leg lock. A lockup results in Regal's back getting put against the rope, so he hits Goldberg in the face and we see a few European uppercuts. Again, Goldberg doesn't know how to react and he just kinda stands there. Goldberg also doesn't go down when Regal tries a single leg takedown, so Regal says fuck it and he goes for the wrist, giving Goldberg another easy opportunity to counter, and Goldberg tries a cover. When they go to get up, Regal kicks Goldberg in the face and Billy Boy now looks a little perplexed. It goes down to the mat where Regal out wrestles his opponent, but when they get to their feet, Regal again gets overpowered. Regal smacks Goldberg across the head and Goldberg replies with a takedown. Regal tries that single leg takedown again. Regal stands up and his wrist lock gets countered with a back suplex. He does make sure though that Goldberg doesn't perform the spear, and things get a bit sloppy when Regal shoots for the leg again and Goldberg messes up this neckbreaker. Goldberg performs a jumping shoulder tackle. Regal replies with some stiff shots in the corner. Goldberg then ends it with a spear followed by the jackhammer, and that's it over. Before we talk about what actually happened here, Goldberg defeated Jim Powers on Thunder. He then defeated Disco Inferno on Saturday night, so this victory here against Regal makes Goldberg 31-0 according to our count. So, the general consensus here is that Regal went into business for himself. He laid in a lot of stiff shots and he made Goldberg look like shit by actually trying to wrestle Goldberg and force Goldberg out of his comfort zone. Regal spoke about this match a little more on his podcast, which comes highly recommended by the way, and Regal said that during this Goldberg match, he was just doing what he was told by the person backstage who was in charge of the match. Regal says Bischoff came out screaming at him after the match, and Regal said to Bischoff, well, I can't hit myself out there. And Regal says he didn't take liberties with Goldberg at all. He tried to get him through a 6-minute match because he was told to get him through a 6-minute match. And one of the saddest things about this was the fact that Regal was clean for weeks leading up to this match. He went cold turkey and he was making an effort to get his addictions under control. After this night and all the drama backstage, he relapsed. He says it's a poor excuse and people will find any old excuse to go back to their bad habits. But yeah, that's Regal done in WCW, but we will see him again down the road. On Nitro next, we've got Chris Adams versus Louis Spicolli. On Raw, Taka Michinoku and Nagila take on Pantera and Brian Christopher. Pantera and Nagila start the match off and Nagila misses a charge attack. He gets kicked in the midsection and he goes up and over from the powerbomb position. Nagila then misses a corkscrew attack, but he lands an arm drag and Pantera gets monkey flipped out of the ring. Taka and Nagila work together to get Brian on the outside too, and Nagila's corkscrew senton here looks insanely good, as does Taka's normal dive to the outside. Back in the ring, Taka gets floored by his opponent at No Way Out later in the week. The dude in the black and white attire lands on his feet after a moonsault attempt. He tags out and too sexy Brian Christopher gets taken out with a spinning wheel kick right away. Nagila then knocks Brian down with a clothesline. Brian dodges a moonsault attempt and we see Brian's full Nelson face crusher. Christopher lands a middle rope dropkick, a German suplex and a body slam. He then tags in Pantera and he misses a swanton bomb before immediately tagging out again. Taka tags in and he cleans house. The ref then gets distracted and Brian pulls out a pair of brass knucks. Taka gets whacked when going for a back suplex and the Panther dude puts the brass knucks in his mask. He then goes upstairs to headbutt Taka, but it doesn't look good. Looks more like a karate chop. Taka gets pinned and Brian has to pick up the illegal object and stuff it down his trunks. This doesn't look right at all, does it? Pantera versus Taka happens later in the week, but there's still better heat with Brian Christopher and Taka, in my opinion. On Nitro, Spicolli walks to the ring holding Zbyszko's bag and Halliburton, and he still pretends to be concerned about Larry's disappearance. He's wrestling gentleman Chris Adams tonight, credited as the man who made the Superkick popular and also the man who trained Stone Cold Steve Austin and Scott Hall. Unfortunately, we don't get a long match here. The audience get immediately distracted by the arrival of Raven's flock. Adams performs a belly-to-belly suplex followed by a back body drop. We then see the super kick, and the referee has to pull Adams away from Spicolli when Chris won't stop throwing punches. Louis then hits Adams on the head with Zbyszko's briefcase and Louis gets himself disqualified. After laying in a few more shots, Larry Zbyszko runs down to the ring and he chases Spicolli around. Spicolli manages to avoid Larry and Larry explains to fans at home what happened while spitting all over the camera. Louis broke into his room, stole his belongings, and he also switched his limousine so he'd arrive in the wrong arena. Sounds like a pretty normal rib to me, living legend. This though, joking aside, is the last time we'll see Spicolli on WCW television. Louis died later in the week after an overdose. He only turned 27 years old when he passed away. We've got a Paul Bearer and Kane promo next on Raw. On Nitro, Ultimo Dragon wrestles Perry Saturn. Paul Bearer says the entire WWF and the leeches of the night are still in shock after seeing Kane tombstone Vader 2 weeks ago. Vader had the audacity to use a fire extinguisher on Kane, and Paul says Vader tried to put out Kane's good eye, but he was unsuccessful. This week, it's going to be time. It's not going to be Vader time. It's going to be Kane time, I guess. Paul hands Kane a clock, and Magician Kane sets the clock on fire just by looking at it. Paul says there's no way out for Vader, and Bearer also says The Undertaker won't show up at No Way Out because the dead man is gone forever. Over on Nitro, I'm kinda intrigued by this Dragon vs Saturn match. Two different styles, yet both are unique enough to make an interesting matchup. I've warmed up to Saturn quite a bit since his Nitro debut, which is great because I wasn't a huge fan of his back in the 90s. I always knew he was good though. Dragon catches Saturn with a sweep and we see the turnbuckle headstand and mule kick early on. Dragon then goes for his kick combo, but Saturn was ready for it and he counters with an STF. This counter impresses Mike Tenay. Saturn performs an overhead belly to belly and he lays the boots in. L.O.D holds up a sign that says, "Why are we here?" And that's deep, man. So deep. Dragon performs a head scissor takedown and Saturn replies with a gargoyle suplex or a Tazplex. Saturn then applies a cross arm breaker, but Dragon makes it to the ropes. Dragon then gets punished in the corner with punches, kicks and a chokehold. Dragon takes a super kick and a big boot after he tries to go toe-to-toe with Perry, and Saturn then pulls off a Fujiwara armbar. Ultimo Dragon stays in there and he pulls off a smooth jumping back kick, and he stops Saturn from performing an aerial attack with a springboard dropkick. We then see the Dragon Steiner, but Saturn fights out of the Dragon Sleeper. Dragon then almost caves Saturn's back in here with a stiff kick. This match has been awesome so far. Unfortunately, it comes to an end a little too soon when Dragon pulls off a Frankensteiner and he counters a suplex with the Dragon Sleeper. Saturn then turns it over and he covers Dragon. Saturn wins the match, and I enjoyed this one. The in-ring action on Nitro this week has been pretty good, but yeah, Saturn wins this week on Monday Nitro. Next on Nitro, Raven battles Booker T. On Raw, the Nation take on Shamrock and Chainz, and we've got WrestleMania press conference highlights. So this Raw match is a teaser for the war of attrition happening this week at No Way Out. Yeah, gang matches now need little subtitles to make you care. Of course, the addition of Ken Shamrock and The Rock makes this week's 10-man tag a bit more noteworthy, plus the Nation get a pass in my book. I'm biased as fuck. Also, get prepared to say goodbye to Ahmed Johnson. No Way Out features his last WWF appearance. It's Kenny Boy Shamrock and Chainz here taking on The Rock and Farouk, and once again, it's The Rock who has all the heat. Rock wants to let all his fans know what he thinks of human genetic cloning, and Rock's all for it as long as it's done selectively. None of these people in the audience are worthy of getting cloned, but The Rock's worthy because he's the people's champion and the best damn intercontinental champion there ever was. If it were me, I'd clone Steve McMichael. Imagine Mongo versus Mongo matches. Unreal. Farouk takes a back elbow, a big boot, and a clothesline from Chainz. Shamrock comes in and Farouk takes more punishment, so the People's Champ tags in, and unfortunately he gets his ass handed to him too. Rock falls into his corner and he tells the ref to tell Shamrock to back the fuck up. He lays in a few punches and then he tags out again, allowing Farouk to take more punishment from Kenny Boy Shamrock. Chainz gets back in and immediately he gets sent out again after getting distracted by D'Lo. The Nation attack Chainz and they soften him up a bit for a Farouk power slam back inside the ropes. Rock tags in, Chainz takes a people's elbow. Farouk then tries jumping on Chainz's back, but the biker Michael Liker turns around and Farouk gets his little Dominator smashed into a million tiny pieces. A Shamrock hot tag leads to Farouk taking the belly to belly. A massive brawl breaks out on the outside. Shamrock delivers a Frankensteiner before applying the ankle lock, and the best thing about this isn't even the most brutal chair shot Shamrock takes from the People's Champ, but still, it leads to the Nation picking up the win. Shamrock completely snaps, the referee takes a belly to belly, Chainz takes a belly to belly, and Shamrock's teammates in the war of attrition have to hold Kenny Boy down like he's some sort of wild animal.
He's an animal! An animal! An animal!
We then see clips of the WrestleMania 14 press conference, and it's announced here that Mike Tyson's going to be the special guest ring enforcer for Michaels vs. Austin. I remember being disappointed with this at the time, and I think a lot of people were expecting Tyson to have some sort of match, but sure. McMahon explains that Tyson brings in outside media attention, and his involvement in WrestleMania just makes sense. Austin says he's been busting his ass for 8 years for this opportunity at WrestleMania, and HBK says his usual line, the Heartbreak Kid lays down for nobody. Mike Tyson says Bruno Sammartino and the Valiant brothers got him into wrestling as a kid and he wants to be involved in wrestling in a big way. Tyson doesn't need boxing and boxing doesn't need Tyson. Both Michaels and Austin say they would have no problems fighting Tyson if they need to. And Triple H can be seen laughing when Tyson says Austin needs to be nice to people and Austin wants to try loving somebody instead of hurting somebody. Things get heated towards the end between Shawn and Austin, and Tyson has to step in to break it up. Good stuff here. The WWF show news highlights from different networks and newspaper clippings of the coverage their press conference received, and it really can't be overstated how much of a big deal this really was. Cast your mind back to Mania 13 last year, and there was nowhere near as much hype or promotional work put into that event. This year, it felt like the WWF were going all out. Before the next Nitro match, we learn what happened in the Benoit vs DDP US title match on Thunder. Check out the foggy N64 arena, guys. It's like driving in Choco Mountain. The Flock got involved and the match got thrown out, but Chris Benoit will get another chance at Super Brawl. Raven and Booker make their way down to the ring, and Raven says Benoit isn't here tonight due to the attack on Thursday. And as for Booker T, Booker has property that belongs to the Flock. #TV title conspiracy. Raven says the flock needs to set an example and teach Booker a lesson, so we don't get a match unfortunately, we get a beatdown from Raven's cronies. Booker does well to hold the flock off and Kidman earns his smack tonight after taking a big old spinebuster, but that's when Raven gets involved. Booker almost gets the better of Raven, but Van Hammer jumps on the apron and this allows Raven to perform the even flow. Saturn then runs down and Booker gets locked in the rings of Saturn as Raven screams "Feel our pain" at the top of his lungs. I was expecting Benoit to show up here or even Rick Martel again, but nah, Booker's on his own and Booker had no chance against the whole faction. Strap yourselves in. Steve Blackman versus Recon on Raw. Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage on Nitro. This is what Reliving the War is all about. Before we look at the Raw match, we see China and Los Boricuas searching for Steve Austin. Handsome Harvey Whippleman has no idea where Stone Cold is, and this jobber doesn't even know who Stone Cold is. Seriously, he's all like, who? China kicks a few cubicle doors, and what you don't see here is Recon absolutely shitting himself in cubicle 1 because he has the hardest match of his life next on Raw. Steve motherfucking Blackman gives us an Eskrima demonstration in the middle of the ring, but don't be fooled. Those aren't wooden sticks dipped in glow paint. That's a lightsaber that Blackman broke in half with his bare hands. Even the fucking camera can't stay in focus by this dazzling display of utter brilliance, and reports state the chairs inside the arena were soaking wet after this one, guys. Ghost Recon is our sacrificial lamb tonight, and there's no monsters on the streets of Evansville, so Steve Blackman can chill out a bit and have a match while Recon can have a big motherfucking problem. As the match gets underway and as Blackman skins the cat just before dropkicking Recon, the Jackal appears on a podium that's getting lowered down to the ringside area. He says he's like the dark angel who was cast out of heaven, descending into a pit of depravity filled with snakes and rats. Jackal says he sacrificed himself for all us who hang on to his every word, and he says this bombastic entrance is a reply to the systematic smear campaign the World Wrestling Federation is currently involved in. Basically, he's talking absolute shite. He says the World Wrestling Federation fears his intellect, and he shows off his intellect by calling his followers the Jackalites. Yeah, the Jackalites. And he keeps talking nonsense as Steve Blackman hits Recon with not one but 2 Russian leg sweeps, doubling up on the punishment and doubling up on the pain. Blackman kicks Recon's head off and the match ends when Recon misses a splash and Blackman applies the motherfucker lock. Recon tops out. Jackal's upset his boy just got owned by Steve Blackman. He gets in the ring and he tells Recon he's a disappointment. He disappointed his mother, his father, his girlfriend, his children, his pet goldfish. It looks like Jackal's about to forgive Recon, but he smacks him across the face instead before turning his back on these 2 jabronis. Still, this part of Raw was a win for Blackman's sick rave skills. 10 out of 10. Savage attacks Hogan during the entrances and Eric Bischoff gets taken out too. The crowd are fully behind the Macho Man tonight. Hogan begs for mercy, but he won't get any from the Macho Man. Hollywood gets choked with his own shirt and Randy tries to pull Hogan's eyeball out of its socket before choking Hogan at the ropes. And then this happens. Yeah, brother, good shit. Hogan tries to get out of the ring, but Macho won't allow it. Savage rakes the face, but Hulk replies with a poke to the eye. And now it's Randy's turn to get choked out. Hulk wants Randy to tell everyone who the man is as he rakes Savage's face again. We have got kicks in the corner, more chokes. Savage gets his chest clubbed by Hollywood Hogan. He gets his back raked. There's another clothesline. Yo, are we going to see any wrestling moves here? Like, are you going to even try to lift each other up for something, or are you just going to work smart tonight, brother? Because this has been shit so far. There's another clothesline followed by an elbow drop from Hulk. A low blow from Macho. Hogan replies with a low blow of his own. This is fucking shit. Oh, look, a back suplex. Earned your paycheck with that one, boys. Devastating. Oh, a body slam. Fucking hell. Hogan putting in the overtime. Hogan chokes Savage on the mat before tossing him out of the ring. Savage grabs a security officer and he begs to get arrested so he doesn't have to work this match, but Hogan strikes from behind. The two then attack each other at the guardrails and Savage goes up for the double axe handle. Hogan moves out of the way and, give them credit, the guardrail bump looked and sounded great here. Liz takes a chair away from Hulk and this allows Savage to pick it up and hit Hogan a few times. Hogan then gets thrown in the ring, Savage performs the elbow drop, the referee begins his count but Buff Bagwell pulls Anderson out of the ring and the NWO launch an attack on the Macho Man. Randy gets destroyed here. Hogan hits Randy with that steel chair a couple of times and he smacks Savage around while the Macho Man's laid out. So you'd naturally assume right here that Randy is now out of the New World Order. The NWO walk back up the entranceway but Randy wakes up. He jumps Hogan but the rest of the faction go after Randy again as we go to commercial break. The match itself was awful, and it sometimes feels like we forgive matches like this when we see chair shots and big finishing moves that make the crowd pop big. But don't get blinded by the lights, brother. In a way, I want to say, you know what, fair play. If you can get away with it and still get paid, then more power to you. But when you're watching it closely and comparing it closely to everything else on Monday nights, the bad match quality really sticks out. On Raw, we have an Outlaws promo and a Goldust vs Thrasher match. On Nitro, Lex Luger calls out Randy Savage as promised earlier. The Outlaws have seemingly got over their remorse and now they're poking fun at Cactus and Chainsaw. Road Dogg says he's getting goosebumps standing this high up and he warns Billy Gunn not to get too close to the edge. Billy says they had so much fun last week that they should do it again. So the Outlaws pull out another dumpster. The Road Dogg gives a running commentary of last week's dumpster bump as it's played on the Titantron, and James wants to reenact what he calls Flight 666 from last week on Runway 69. They push the dumpster off the stage, they pull out two blow-up dolls as the crowd boos. James struggles to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to Cactus, but he tells Billy to bring Chainsaw Charlie back to the hotel room. James says if there's anything left of Cactus and Charlie, the Outlaws plan on sweeping their remains under the rug at the pay-per-view this week. Before the Raw main event, Chyna and Los Boricuas split up to find Stone Cold and the Boricuas end up getting locked inside a room by Austin. Austin calls the Boricuas a bunch of silly bastards while Savio calls Austin a piece of shit. Chyna realizes what just happened and after failing to get the doors open, she kicks over a trash can and she flips a table. DX just lost their backup. Back in the ring, we get Headbanger Thrasher vs Goldust in the Raw main event. I know, crazy. Sable, Mark Mero and Luna come to the ring with Marilyn Dust, but Sable gets immediately sent to the back by Mero. Headbanger Mosh, Mero and Luna then help out when the action spills to the outside, and the match we get here is nothing special at all. But the crowd pops when Sable comes back down the ringside to confront Luna. Goldust tries to send Sable back up the ramp, but he gets slapped in the face, resulting in Thrasher rolling Goldust up for a victory. Sable then argues with Mero and Luna gets slapped in the face too, so it looks like Sable's finally thinking about breaking free and doing her own thing. This storyline continues at No Way Out when the Headbangers face Goldust and Mero in a tag team match. Over on Nitro, Luger wants a piece of Randy Savage. Randy just got his ass kicked, but Lex doesn't care. He said he'd pick up the scraps, and that's exactly what he's gonna do here on Nitro. Liz causes a distraction and Randy attacks from behind, dropping Luger on the top rope and immediately going upstairs to end it right away with an elbow drop. But he's stopped by Sting. He prepares a Scorpion Death Drop and then Hogan shows up and he tells Sting, go ahead, do it. Sting performs his finisher on Savage. Hulk and the rest of the NWO slowly approach the ring, and then a giant fucking net falls from the ceiling and Sting's been caught along with Luger and Savage. The NWO beat up all three men while they're caught in the net, and yeah, there's a kinda Looney Tunes Acme feel to this whole thing, isn't there? I'm just imagining Vincent hanging off the ceiling and setting that net up earlier in the day. Raw ends with DX trying to get the WWF Championship back. On Nitro, we've got the Outsiders versus the Steiner brothers. This Nitro main event's going to be a difficult one for Rick and Scott to win. The brothers have had nothing but problems lately, mainly thanks to Scott being selfish, but let's see how it plays out. The tag team titles are on the line. The Outsiders have a little fun before conducting their survey, and El Paso is almost 100% NWO. Listen to this.
Come to see the...
One more for the good guys. We come back from a commercial break and Scott Hall reminds Randy Savage that when you're NWO, you're NWO for life. Kevin Nash sends a message to Sean Waltman. He tells Six to hurry up and get back so the Wolfpack can get back together. 1998 is gonna be the year of the Wolf. Rick Steiner starts the match off instead of Scotty. He performs a Steiner line and an elbow drop on Scott Hall, and he then makes the mistake of tagging Scotty in. The bad guy performs a chokeslam and he makes fun of the Giant and his neck injury afterwards. Steiner replies with an overhead belly-to-belly suplex. Kevin Nash gets clocked on the apron, but this allows Scott to perform a clothesline, and then Big Sexy gets tagged in. Nash punishes Scotty in the corner before Hall comes back in for a fallaway slam. Here comes Nash again with a leapfrog body guillotine, and now Rick's getting restless. Scott needs to tag out, but it's highly likely that he won't bother. Nash delivers a big boot and a sidewalk slam. He teases the audience with a jackknife, but he doesn't do it. Scott Hall comes back in with a running corner clothesline, and Scotty fights back with a double underhook suplex. Rick begs Scott to tag him in, and Scott says no, he's got it under control. Hall then shoves Scotty into Rick, and that's going to count as a tag. Hall doesn't realize that Rick's the legal man. He sets Scotty up for the outsider's edge, but Rick hits a top rope bulldog before taking Nash out. Rick then covers Hall, and we've got new tag team champions on Monday Nitro. It looks like Scotty's a bit pissed off and things look a little tense, but he ends up hugging his brother and there's a big old celebration to close Nitro. It was good to see a clean finish this week. Over on Raw, Shawn Michaels starts things off by promoting the No Way Out main event, DX and the Outlaws versus Owen, Hart, Steve Austin, Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. Shawn then says he's not going to wait until Sunday to get back what's rightfully his. Shawn's in the ring just like Austin wanted. The Heartbreak Kid's ready to take his gold back, so Shawn calls Stone Cold out and then the glass shatters. Austin walks down to the ring holding the belt and DX run away when Austin tries to use the belt as a weapon. The Outlaws come out too, but they don't get in the ring either. DX and the Outlaws group together and they get ready to get in the ring. Chyna grabs the belt for Shawn while Austin keeps an eye on his opponents. A chainsaw can then be heard and Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie emerge from under the ring. Owen Hart joins the babyfaces and DX decide to run away while the Outlaws take a beating from Austin, Owen, Cactus and Chainsaw. Shawn's got his belt back, he shouts that the championship's going to stay with the Heartbreak Kid, and Jim Ross says it's going to be war this Sunday on pay-per-view. Nitro wins Reliving the War this week. WCW had better matches, including the Eddie and Jericho vs Malenko and Chavo tag bout, Ultimo Dragon vs Perry Saturn, the Steiners vs the Outsiders, and the Goldberg vs Regal match is still very fascinating to look back on. The WrestleMania press conference I felt was the highlight of Raw, but there wasn't much here in terms of good matches. The light heavyweight encounter was decent and so was the Nation's tag team match, but still Nitro was better in my opinion. Our scores are now 54 points to Raw, 52 points to Nitro, and there's 14 ties on the board. In the television ratings, both shows had a dip. Nitro got a 4.6 while Raw got a 3.2. WWF No Way Out of Texas in your house is our next stop in Reliving the War, and as always we'll look at the entire event from start to end to see how it holds up today. Early access is available on Patreon, so if you don't want to wait you can check it out now. On Nitro next week, the NWO target Bret Hart, the Outsiders are in action again against Public Enemy, and Disco Inferno scheduled to take on Perry Saturn. Thanks for watching everyone, and I hope you enjoyed Reliving the War this week. Take care.